All right. Hi, everybody. We're going to give it just a few more minutes for folks to trickle in. I'm really excited to kick off this topic, though, so we won't delay it too much longer. Um, while we're waiting for people, obviously, there's a holiday next week that revolves around food. I personally am going to be driving 5 hours to go see my family and bake a lot of treats. And I think I really love Christmas, so I'm probably going to pick up a Christmas tree in my hometown because it's cheaper than buying it here in the middle of Chicago. I don't know. What about you, Isaac? What are you thinking about doing next week?
Well, we are hosting this year, so it'll be my parents and my brother and his family. So not a huge crowd, but wish us luck all the same.
Yeah, especially your first time around. You're going to do great. Jake, what are you doing?
Yeah, we're gonna go up. My family lives about an hour northwest of Minneapolis here, so we're gonna go see them. We're bringing some mac and cheese and some really good cookies and all sorts of good food there. So yeah, looking forward to digging into that. I actually already set up my Christmas tree. I know some people think that I can't do that before Thanksgiving, but I said I'm excited about it. I got a new tree. I'm setting it up early.
Sound off in the comments, guys. Are you a pre or post Thanksgiving Christmas tree kind of person? While you guys do that, we are going to kick it off. Thank you so much to everyone who has joined. I'm very excited to have you here today. We are talking strategic attack surface management, piecing together the puzzle. My name is Emma Kornstrom. I'm NetSPI Senior Demand Generation Manager, and I'm going to be your host today. You don't want to ask me any questions. You're going to want to hear from our two experts. I'm going to introduce them in a second here. Let me just get through some housekeeping items. So the first is we are recording this session. So don't feel like you need to take a whole bunch of notes in really quick succession. We'll send it around afterwards. You can share it with colleagues, family, friends, whoever you think would be interested. Also, we are going to have some time for Q&A at the end, so please pop your questions into the Q&A here. We'll address it at the end if we're not able to get to it in the moment. So if we can't get to it, trust us, we will. And we also really want to hear from you guys. So we have some polls that we'll be launching today. We really want to get some more information on where you're at with what you're looking to achieve at your business when it comes to securing your attack surface and anything else that we can sort of do to help you along that journey. So answer those polls whenever you see them pop up. We are going to have a really great session today. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our speakers and then I'll get into what we're discussing. And while I do that, I am also going to see who are you guys today? So while I'm introducing these guys, sound off, tell us who you are. So first up is Isaac Clayton, one of our senior security researchers here at NetSPI. Isaac is an expert in building asset discovery and vulnerability identification capabilities in our own attack surface management solution. I'm really excited to have him on today to talk about automation, manual services, and all of the expertise he's got to offer. Isaac, do you want to say hi and introduce yourself to the team?
Yeah, you said it. You said it great, Emma. So I'm Isaac Clayton, security researcher and engineer here, and my focus is kind of very broadly our external attack surface management product. But that looks like building a lot of new capabilities, improving our existing ones, developing security content for all of our scanners, and then just being kind of the general interface between all of our different stakeholders and our engineering teams to make sure we're bringing the best to our products.
It sounds like he's a little bit of a translator, folks. He gets to talk about what he does, but then also dumb it down maybe for the rest of us sometimes. Thank you so much, Isaac, for joining us today. We also have Jake Kramber here, our NetSPI ASM product marketing manager. Jake's got some deep expertise in collaborative GTM efforts and cross-departmental product launches. If you've been paying attention to NetSPI at all this year, you know that we've been running him ragged with all of these product launches. Jake, why don't you tell us who you are and why you're here today?
Yeah, again, like Isaac just said, that was a great summary, Emma. Thanks for the introduction here. My name is Jake Kramber. I'm our ASM product marketing manager. So really focused in on our EASM solution and now our new CASM solution here as well. And really taking the technical things that we're doing in those products and translating those into business benefits and how that improves our customers' ROIs. So really excited to be here.
Thank you both. I'm really excited to get into it. We have a lot to cover today. So let's get into the agenda. When we're talking about piecing together the puzzle of attack surface management, what are we going to cover today? So today we're going to get into some of the basics. We just want to level set with everyone. what is external network penetration testing? What does it look like and encompass? And then what is external attack surface management? And the same questions here. How do those two engage with one another, not engage with one another? How are they different? We're going to get into the strengths and weaknesses of both. When we're talking about manual human-driven services versus automation, how have they developed? What are the good things and the harder things about working with each? And then we're going to get into this stuff that I think everyone's here for, which is leveraging both of them against one another. How do you get it right? When we're talking about marrying the efficiency and scaling advantages of automation, pairing that with human-driven manual testing, what are the best tips, tricks that the two of them have? And then at the end here, Isaac has some big three questions for all of you to ask yourselves about piecing together that security puzzle at your organization and hopefully giving you guys a little bit more direction there. All right, well, again, a lot to cover, so let's kick it off. We are going to get into external network penetration testing, and I also hope that everyone in the audience today enjoys my graphic design capabilities. I am not a designer. Please don't judge too harshly. Let's start with you, Isaac. Let's get a level set for our audience. What is an external network penetration test, and what does that encompass?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I think probably a lot of the audience will be familiar with penetration testing generally. An external network penetration test it's like a point-in-time test that looks at kind of comprehensively your whole security or your whole external network, and tries to identify security weaknesses, vulnerabilities, things like that within it. By external here, we mean like from an attacker's perspective, from the outside looking in, as opposed to, having a system inside, like on a VPN or inside of a physical location or in the network. So the kinds of assets it's looking at, like domains, cloud storage, IP addresses, anything that's visible to an attacker from the outside.
Yeah. Why would someone, and again, our audience is probably familiar with this, but why would someone get an external network penetration test? Like what circumstances would lead to you needing or wanting one?
Yeah, great question. So a lot of reasons. I mean, I think in my opinion, an external network penetration test should be part of every security program, just because it's a really good deep analysis of or deep assessment of your network. But there are other reasons that might, force people to get it. For example, if you're in a regulated industry where you have to meet some compliance standard, chances are you're getting a compliance-focused external penetration test, once or twice a year. Oftentimes, for example, insurance providers will require that you have an external network penetration test. It's sort of just a really good baseline for understanding, at least in the moment, how your security program is performing.
Absolutely. Okay. All right, Jake, we're coming to you because I know that you love EASM and you talk about it all of the time. So sell it to us here. What is external attack surface management and how is it different than what Isaac just discussed?
Yeah, I'd say I'm going to start this by just painting a little background picture on kind of EASM and how it came to be, right? And I think it's been really common to perform some sort of testing at some sort of interval, throughout the last few years. And I'd say some people will do that annually, some people will do that quarterly, and then you kind of supplement that with some sort of vulnerability scanning or other, different tooling kind of in between. But the challenge really came that it wasn't frequent enough to keep pace with the environments and the change that's happening throughout the industry. Like last year, there were over 29,000 new CVEs that got released. And even if we look at just the last year, how things have changed with, more remote employees, cloud migration, and new technologies like ChatGPT, right? So like if ChatGPT is brought into your environment because somebody signs up with their employee email,
Right.
Guess what? That's on your attack surface. Then there's no security process in place to know, hey, this is now in my environment. They just went and signed up. But that's still something that then you have to be aware of and protect. And so I think there's a lot of tools and processes that we've talked about that really create that asset inventory at a point in time, using your various sources of truth within your environment. But keeping that updated and keeping that accurate is a whole nother ballgame, right? And so I think pen tests and vulnerabilities can include some sort of asset discovery. They're typically more of a scoped engagement, meaning you have to build it out and you have to tell it what to test.
Yeah.
And so, unfortunately, then your undiscovered assets or those shadow IT components are then, still at risk, right? And so, right now, people really have wanted to shift to this always-on type of solution, such as an EASM, where we're going to be looking for those new assets and the vulnerabilities within them all the time, right? And so that's really where it came to be. And I'd say traditionally organizations have taken more of a, call it reactive approach or detective approach, where they're going to build these defenses and then wait for somebody to try to break in and hope that their defenses hold up. Whereas we're seeing this shift, with CTEM and proactive security, where people are now trying to be more, let's take the first step ourselves and go out there and try to find these different things through that proactive approach, discover your assets, those exposures, and the vulnerabilities within them before they get discovered or exploited by attackers, and really reduce your risk overall.
Thank you guys. I think, we probably all in the audience know, but I think it's really good to level set on what we're talking about when we're discussing the automation and manual services today. So let's dig deeper into those external network pen tests and get into their strengths and weaknesses. I'm going to pit the two of you against each other here. Jake, can you tell me what the strengths of manual services are in cybersecurity, like an external network pen test?
Yeah, I mean, I think the core strength of a penetration test in general, whether that's an external network test or any other various areas, really that depth of testing being that core thing. You have the human element with the manual validation and prioritization and exploitation within that scope that the testing's agreed upon, and maybe some asset discovery, but typically on that agreed upon scope. And you get this large document with a lot of valuable info in it for that point in time. And so that's really nice. With our EASM solution, that we do actually includes manual validation and prioritization as well. There's not the exploitation aspect of that, but we do really try to focus on reducing that noise. And I'd say the other thing with that external network test is then going to be the compliance and regulatory component of that. I'd say there's a lot of different things out there right now, a lot of different regulatory bodies or compliance metrics that you have to then do in order to stay in business, especially in certain industries like healthcare or finance or those kind of areas. And so that compliance aspect, I think, is a really big standout strength for an external network type of test. And I'd say the last one that I want to highlight on here is really that third-party vendor perspective. And this kind of ties with the compliance point that I just mentioned. But there's a lot of vendors out there or suppliers or customers who will then require that they're working with a secure organization, or it can help your organization then differentiate from another competitor out there saying, hey, we are going to make sure that we're amping up our security so that we have a lot lower risk than maybe the other guy. And so building that reliability, that confidence, and that, customer trust, really, that when I go put my credit card at whatever, shop it is, or if, let's say I'm a bigger organization and I have, all of these suppliers delivering things, I want to know my credit card's safe, and they want to know their business is safe, that we're not going to have a breach, that now all of this expected revenue that I was going to get from these shipments is now stopped.
Yeah. I think, we talk a lot at NetSPI about, getting beyond compliance mindsets, but compliance is still a really big factor for folks. So I think that it's really great to highlight what the strengths are there. So, all right, Isaac, poke holes in it all. What are the weaknesses of manual services?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I'm already on the record as thinking that manual services definitely have a role to play. But, I think the first most glaring one is it's a point in time test, right? So it's, typically whether you're getting them once a year or twice a year or weekly, like whatever the cadence is that you're getting a penetration test performed, it's still only going to tell you about everything up to that point. So, Jake, you mentioned the number. I don't know what the number was off the top of my head, but the number of CVEs that were published last year, those are published, throughout the course of the year. And so if you're getting a test done in, March, but a new crazy vulnerability is published in April, you won't necessarily know about that from your test. So, but the point in time aspect of it is just one of the kind of limitations of it. Other thing you mentioned, Jake, was scope. So oftentimes we know the scope for a penetration test before we go in. There's a set of assets that a customer has said, go look at these. Now, that could be all of their assets, but very often that's a subset of the assets that they want tested. And so it might give the impression that it's representative of the real risk that's there. But if we could be missing things just by virtue of that scope. Also, it's not how attackers operate. They start from all of your assets and they'll look at all of them. So So it's not representative in that regard either.
If only
And
we
I
could
think
ask
last,
hackers to stay within scope. If only.
yeah, it's off limits. Yeah, so the third thing there, just with, given that you're paying somebody to come sit down and, look at, all of these assets, try and break applications, they're bringing all of their expertise and background to bear. And that's just going to be a costly exercise inherently. So, I mean, cost is definitely a limiting factor for these sorts of tests and any kind of manual service.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys for that rundown. I think it's good for us to, look at what the good things are, but also like where we need to balance this out. So let's do the same thing for external attack surface management. Obviously, Jake, all of the benefits that the automation of something like EASM provides. What are the strengths that we do see in automation?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot that we could talk about. I feel like we could probably fill up a whole webinar in of itself in this, but I don't know that everybody would want to hear me ramble for that long. So I'll try to keep it brief, right? But I think the first one is, that always on approach. Like Isaac just said, those penetration tests or other solutions are going to be really point in time. And so you want that always on, hey, I'm discovering things or I'm testing things as they're introduced to my environment versus having to wait 11 or 12 months for that next test in order to discover the risk and those vulnerabilities in your environment. Just like Isaac said, if I got my test in March, that's great. But if there's a big vulnerability that's introduced in April, guess what? I have a challenge. Whereas with EASM, you can really keep pace with that. And then I'd say the other thing is that asset discovery. I think there's a common saying that is you can't protect what you don't know. And so by having that kind of wide open scope and always scanning for new things and discovering new things, it really opens up that that inventory and keeps that updated versus manually trying to keep your asset inventory updated through the use of these multiple tools. It's one spot and it's accurate. And it's nice too because then you can drill into some of those other areas. It's not just going to be your networks. It can also be things like web applications that are externally facing or cloud instances that might be exposed somewhere, right? And so I think it's a broader scope, which is really nice. And I'd also say then the scaling, right? So it's much easier to scale that automation versus a manual test. Like Isaac mentioned here, if you're having somebody hands-on keyboard doing this all the time, you have to pay that person and you need to equip them with tools, and it can get expensive really, really quick. And so this is a nice way to ensure that you're maintaining that security and getting the things that you need, but then not, absorbing all of the costs that you might have to if you have somebody physically doing that. And I think the last thing is just that continuous refinement and like the learnings, so like we go out and we do this with all of our customers. So when you work with us, you're getting the benefits of not only what you and your team know, but what we've learned through our thousands and thousands of engagements. And we can take that, and as you work with us, we're going to continue to optimize those results to really get you what you're looking for when you want it. Versus at a point in time test, you kind of get your results, and guess what? You sit there for the next year, and you probably are going to have the same challenges from maybe that first report of, maybe some additional noise, or, oh, we don't actually care about this thing because it's not connected to anything important or whatever it might be. You're going to get those same results in that next year's report, right? Whereas with EASM solutions, you can kind of continually refine and get what you're looking for when you want it.
All right, Isaac. I don't know. He's got me like halfway convinced here. And you're the person building our automated solutions here with EASM. But I want you to poke holes in your own tools here. What are the weaknesses of automated solutions?
I definitely don't want to, talk you away from or out of automation. I'm a fan. So I mean, I think just the first thing, your cartoon, your XKCD cartoon you have there. So I mean that describes kind of the reality of my life, I think, at NetSPI. Building automation, we think, oh, this is great. I'll just I'll automate it. It's fine. But there's actually a lot of problems that you don't see when you set out to do that crop up, a lot of complexity that gets introduced. And then as you scale that up, it becomes kind of even more challenging. So that's a good one. It's representative for sure. I think from a like a customer perspective or an end user perspective, the biggest thing I'd say is like the signal to noise ratio. So, it's awesome, like Jake, you said that, you get that kind of continuous view into what your assets look like. And now, albeit it's not a super deep view in all cases, but you do have that very frequent kind of scanning happening. But the question is how much of the stuff that's being found by that automation is actually really interesting and really impactful. And I think the tendency for automation generally is to it finds things that are not always super impactful or important to a security kind of customer. And it also might miss things that are like too deep for it to find through its automation and scanning.
Yeah.
So like a type 1, type 2 error there. But yes, it's a generally just signal to noise, but you have some benefits too. So
Absolutely. All right. So I've made you guys do the hard part. You get to be on the same team now. Let's talk about leveraging these two. I think one of the really important things here is, Isaac just said he doesn't want to, turn anyone off of automation. I think one of the things that we want to make really clear here is that cybersecurity is a really new industry. And so just as much as all of the hackers are still learning and developing new tech, so are we. So the argument here is not that either of these are unimportant. It's just that we know that because we're moving so quickly and developing tech so quickly, that no single solution or tool is going to fill every single gap you have. That would be so nice. So with that in mind, Isaac, and considering the strengths and weaknesses of the automated solutions and manual human-driven services that we just kind of outlined, how do we leverage their strengths with one another and get them to work in tandem? And I'm also going to launch a poll here right while you start talking.
cool. Yeah, I mean, I think just so I go on the record here, it's not a question in my mind of automation versus manual services. It's both.
Yeah.
And so maybe if we can back up and so here's how I see the problem that these tools are trying to solve. We think about it from an external assessment perspective, whether that's EASM or an external penetration test. It's sort of a filtering exercise. So you start at the top with all of this data, and it funnels down to where a tester is looking at only the really important stuff that are going to be high impact security, security vulnerabilities or misconfigurations. So at the top of this funnel, you've got maybe all of the assets belonging to an organization. At the middle level, you've got all of the ports and services and applications that are actually running on those applications. And then at the bottom, you've got very specific pieces of potentially exploitable or otherwise problematic application logic or things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So with that said, I think in practice, what you want to do, if I were doing this myself today and building out an entire perfect blend of it, from scratch, the first step would be automate all the things that you can automate, automate them. And chances are, most people who are security practitioners, you're already doing this, right? You're not port scanning through some kind of manual effort, whatever that might look like. You're using, Nmap or some kind of a tool. Same thing for really every one of the tasks that we're trying to perform in these sorts of assessments. So find a set of tools that work for you, that you're comfortable with, that accomplish the kind of specific security need you're trying to accomplish, and then get familiar with those. After you've got those tools, then I think it's building those into systems that orchestrate their use. And what I mean by that is, starting with asset discovery, passing those assets into a series of scans that are going to efficiently enumerate all the services, the ports, the applications, and then delivering at the end of that whole thing to a security professional, like a very specific set of information that they can go look at in a way that only a human can. So if you do these things and you give them these tools to use and you kind of let them run free with them, then you sit back and you watch like how they're using them, where the gaps in your coverage are. You actively solicit feedback from them to figure out where there's opportunities to improve on your whole flow, and you kind of repeat that over and over again. And I think if you've done that well, you've enabled not only a more efficient use of a human's time, but you've actually enabled them to do their job even better than they would be without all of the automation. And I think that's a good thing for all of us who are operating kind of in resource constrained programs.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that that's such a great outline. Jake, I want to talk to you. So this is basically like this hybridization that Isaac is talking about. And again, we're not here to sell, anything that we're doing to people, but can you talk more about what that hybrid relationship between manual and automation looks like for NetSPI and what we've seen kind of works best for customers generally across the board?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And I love that term, that hybridization, because I think, as much as we love to have everything automated and everything's done perfectly, and I show up for work and hey, I have my 3 emails that I actually have to do something with, and I can, crack a Diet Coke open and relax, right? That'd be awesome. But unfortunately, it's not the case, right? So I'd say NetSPI really lives in that hybrid zone, right? Because we have our three kind of core pillars that we have built this company on. That is our people, our processes, and our technologies. And we've got over 300 in-house security consultants who are going through and manually validating and prioritizing these findings,
Yeah.
whether they're going to be in an external network test, another form of penetration testing, our EASM solution, and so on and so forth. And so, as we mentioned, those aren't going to be the exact same, but they do pair really, really well together. And so I always kind of recommend this better together approach that leverages that external network test for that deep dive point in time, kind of compliance driven or getting that letter of attestation, but then leverage tools like attack surface management, NetSPI's EASM or a CASM solution to continue doing the discovery and testing in between and monitor all those assets in between those point in time tests. So kind of my answer is going to be, yeah, that hybrid spot is really where you want to be, I think.
That's awesome. And thank you both. I think I have two things. First, I did not know, Jake, that you are fairly starting the morning with a Diet Coke at 8 a.m. That is news to me. I think one of the things that also I've really appreciated about this conversation, Isaac, I love that funnel analogy. I'm a really visual learner. And so, and I think for those of us who are kind of figuring out how to piece this together, it really helps me place in my mind where each of those approaches matches up and blends together to work in tandem while having the same end goal, right? It's just got different tactics. So I love that funnel. So you again, you don't have to take notes, guys, but I hope everyone's drawing funnels in their notebooks right now. So we have talked about our recommendations on hybridizing. Let's Isaac is going to ask some spicy questions now. So what happens when you want to actually do this, right? This could potentially be something, we might have people in the audience who are only, doing pen testing or who are doing some kind of blend of the two, but maybe they're not working together the way that they want to. So, we've got three big questions that you're going to ask the audience here about what their automated and manual security controls are missing, what they're doing well, how they cooperate with the end goal for you all to really determine what the next steps are for your business. So I'm going to ask the questions. Isaac is going to get into what he meant here. And I will warn everyone, this first one's a little bit esoteric. So, don't get too worried about it. And I'm also going to launch a poll. The first question that Isaac has got for you all is, are you being honest with yourself about the testing and the compliance that you're doing and the results that you're getting?
Yeah. So to add some color to that, let me start by saying, there's no perfect security, right? This entire business is about, or the entire industry is about risk mitigation, and ideally that's informed risk mitigation.
Yeah.
So what that question is really getting at is, I think there's a tendency because somebody is telling us you have to do these tests in order to meet compliance, and so you can continue operating your business or your organization. We think that maybe means something in the absolute security sense, and that's not always the case. So I would say, compliance is not the same thing as security, and I hope we're all being honest with ourselves about that. Yeah, and so I think beyond that, though, also the results. Just because we have results, say a million findings from a vulnerability scanner or some sort of automation, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's improving your security. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's a good use of your resources. So these are the kinds of questions I think we should be asking ourselves on this question.
Absolutely. All right. So the second question that Isaac has for homework for you all, are your automated and manual processes actually working in tandem to solve the security concerns that your business has identified as its top priorities?
Yeah. So hopefully Jake and I have made our argument for hybridization. I think I think that is the future, right? Attackers are doing this. Attackers have built out like a whole ecosystem where they're sharing tools and they're sharing processes. They have got whole business models built around this. So they're getting super organized and they're really integrating all of the processes and the tooling to accomplish their goals. And so really on our side, we have to be doing the same thing. I think, it's not sufficient to say I'm using automated tools or automation and manual processes. You really need to be using them in a way that that enables them to work better together, like you said, Jake. So that's kind of what I'm getting to on that one.
Awesome. All right. And this is the last question from Isaac and our last full slide here. So if you guys have any questions, pop them in the Q&A so we can get to them later. If you don't have any right now or your mind is churning, you can always reach back out to us later. Again, we'll send this out as a recording and you can contact us after that. All right. The last question. Do you know how much time or money is being spent on manual testing? And do you have a way to measure their efficacy? And I think, Isaac, you have a pretty good example of how time and money could be wasted if you're not approaching manual testing correctly.
Yeah, I think I've got a couple, but so background on me, I don't think I mentioned this. So I actually originally came to NetSPI as a security consultant. So I was doing penetration tests, the manual penetration tests every day. And one of the things that I was like blown away by and really delighted by as a security professional was just our internal tool for kind of project tracking and for reporting and report generation. So I'm used to having gone out there and done kept track of all of this stuff through my own sorts of tools, handwritten reports painstakingly for customers, making sure that everything is just so. And came to NetSPI and we have this tool called Resolve that kind of enables consultants to track all of their work, to automatically generate findings based on just a small number of inputs that only the kinds of things that they need to put in, and so like the amount of administrative time that is being saved in things like that is absolutely game changing. So I think that as we look out at getting these penetration or manual services performed, I think the question we should probably be asking, to the extent that we can have that visibility, is like where are my dollars actually going? If they're going to 80% testing and 20% reporting, that's fine. But let's make sure that we know how that's being allocated. And then that's where I think that the automation piece comes in. These are the kinds of questions that are probably worth asking of vendors, whoever they are. What does your automation, your mix of tooling, your testing methodology look like, and how is that driving efficiency, to make the most out of my dollars?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I do want to jump in here really quick too, because I think that is such a critical question. It's like, yes, we have this, this ROI that we're trying to get to, but where is that money actually going, and how much of it is actually being spent on these manual aspects, and how much is spent on the automation? And is there a way that we can put checklists in place, or some sort of template that now our consultants can fill in 3 blanks versus having to type out a full paragraph, right, to report this kind of thing? And I love kind of when we were talking, the other day here, Isaac, you brought up a story of somebody who, was working at this company, and they were just going to hire 2 full-time security engineers to go through just the results of their vulnerability scanner,
Right.
and validate and prioritize that. And when you think of the hundreds of thousands of dollars that is costing the company to just go through and check the box yes or no on these different validation and prioritization aspects, it's really interesting, because that is such an area where if you have the right tooling in place, you can definitely streamline it, but you do need some sort of manual aspect. So I think, long story short, looking at how is that validation and prioritization working for you, and how much time is really being spent on that versus them just going through and deleting the email of the notification,
Yeah. All right. Those are big questions. I hope that they are helpful for our audience. They're definitely, bigger picture questions, right? Thinking about how can we put these together? Where am I spending my money? And I think, Isaac, your point about truly informed risk. We're not believers that companies have no risk. That's not possible. But having that informed risk, deciding what you are okay with in order to operate your business and what you're not okay with, and understanding what tools and services you can put together to determine that, to really work on risk mitigation and risk management, I think is really important. That is the end of our session today, and it doesn't look like we have any questions in the Q&A, which is totally fine. I just wanted to say a huge thank you to the 2 of you for doing this. This was really informative. And Isaac, I think that those questions are really, really good ones for folks at, I think, all levels of cybersecurity practitioner, leader, to ask themselves to step back, to think about what could be easier literally about my job, or what could I be doing to help my team. So thank you both so much. This has been a really great session. All right.
Yeah, thanks so much for hosting this, and thanks everybody for joining in.
Absolutely. Bye, everyone.